Welcome to Film Study, an All American podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment, rate the podcast 5 stars, all that stuff. But today we are talking about Simone Hicks, aka the catalyst, the main character of All American Homecoming, the reason for the spinoff. And so we're super excited. I had a chance to talk with my friend Liv on Twitter, so hope that you enjoy this conversation, and yeah, we'll be covering Simone Hicks in her character. She's been through a lot since she arrived on the scene, and was it like 204, 205? So she's been through quite a bit. Just like all of the other characters in All American. And she is the chance to lead her own show, which we'll talk about. This is actually really exciting for me because it's like we're getting to the crossover. Like, she is the reason for the
Yeah,
crossover. She is the reason for the expanded universe. So that's very
yeah,
exciting that we're actually like crossing over through this podcast. So it's both All American and Homecoming podcast. Um awesome. So you ready to get into it, Liv?
yeah. Let's get into it.
Cool. So just a quick question for you. How did Simone come to be your favorite character?
Okay. Well, first when she showed up, I knew that characters showing up. I think season two is actually one of my favorite seasons. Care showed up, and then Simone showed up. I don't know. They just brought something different. I mean, I adore the other girls, Olivia and Layla, but there was just something about Kia and Simone that I felt was a little bit different, that was missing from the show that they brought on. Especially with Simone, she was firm and sweet. She's a mix of everything. I mean, she kind of reminds me of myself, I think. The fact that she's nice and sweet, but she's also super firm. Like, you can play with her, but she's also that super supportive friend that she has always been on the show, and something we see expanded more on All American Homecoming. That's why I'm really so excited about the fact that she got her own show, because on All American we only saw her as an extension of the relationship with Jordan. So
Right.
but somehow she still brought her personality, even though it was briefly. But any chance she got, she really brought her personality, and it was really nice to see.
Yeah, yeah. And that's credit to Jeffrey Maya. She's an
Yeah,
amazing actress, I think,
I
because I
don't
think
think
she
anyone
did.
would be able to play Simone as much as she has done. I think she has brought so much of
Right.
a personality to that character, and so far it has continued to expand in the most beautiful way. So yeah,
I completely agree. I think that um and I say this often because I don't I All American is a huge show. They're going on season 5, right? Really big on Netflix, etc. So I think it's really hard for new characters to come in and cement their place in the lineup. And I have to say, because I'm thinking about it now, like between Jeffrey and some of the new folks that have come on in season 4, like I feel like they have really put their stamp on characters like in new ways. So I feel like Jeffrey was like the one of the first people to like actually put a stamp on All American as like a recurring star. And then you see like later
yeah,
on sort of the girl who plays Jamie, and the girl who plays Sky, like they're both I feel like following that Jeffrey Maya like model of like putting your
yeah,
stamp on a character and
e-
making an impression on the audience right away.
exactly. Like, I think aside Simone, I can tell you, I won't lie to you. As you were mentioning Sky and Jamie, I was like, who? I was like, I'm serious. Like, I almost already forgot about them. Like, it just goes to show that. I mean, of course, I knew they did something, but it didn't like imprint anything in my memory. I was still
Mhm.
trying to figure out who is she talking about?
Yeah.
So I'm
Well, maybe
sorry.
it was
I
just
know
me. Maybe they just
that.
made an impression on me. So I think that they're
No,
following the Jeffrey model
no.
Maya
It took me a
Maya
minute.
model.
Yeah, it just took me a minute though. But
Yeah.
I was I think Care too, because she wasn't even there for so long and she's so
Oh,
loved.
Kia, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
miss her so much.
Oh, same,
Like I
same. I see.
the
I
other
count Kia as like original cast because she's been there
exactly.
since season one, just killing it. Like
Yeah.
she's OG. She's OG for me. But no, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
And she's been
Kia.
gone for so long and yet people still want to
Still
see her
people want
back. Like
her. They're
that's
still
the
like, "We
impact.
need
That's the
Asia. We
impact.
need Asia
Yeah.
back." Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We need Asia
Like I
back.
know
Yeah.
she's busy. I know she's busy, but girl, please just have mercy. Come
Yeah,
show
and
us love.
Seeing Kia and Simone in a like scene together and in an episode together
Yeah.
would be so fun. I know I think all of us really wanted Kia to be on Homecoming because she's the character that sort of made it the most sense to go from All American to Homecoming with it being
Yeah.
an HBCU. But I think Asia, the actress, was very very busy, so it's just missed opportunity. But hopefully we still get that. Like
Yeah.
hopefully we still get
Hopefully, yeah. I
Kia and
feel like
Simone.
it has to feel, it feels right that she just has to come back at some point. Like, I would need
Yeah,
that. I'm literally
yeah.
on my knees pleading with whoever needs to make it happen. It just has to happen at some
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree. But to your point, I think similarly, one of the reasons I like the character of Simone made an impression on me was because number one, how they wrote her. I think that you're absolutely correct in that she was very much confident like right off the bat. If
Yeah.
there's one scene that sticks in my mind for Simone, it's literally her at the birthday party and they were playing hide and go get it, right, and Jordan's already like making out with some girl and she just sits
Yeah.
there,
And
she's
then
just
she
like, I'll
just,
wait. Like,
I'll wait. Like, she's not like, oh, okay, I'll just go outside and wait. Or so, I'll wait. And just straight up said, Jordan was like, okay, okay. And, he just had to do something at that point. So
right,
that firmness that
right.
she has, it's just so beautiful. And she does it not in an, some characters would be firm, but
Hmm.
annoying. But that firmness is like really so cool to watch. Like,
Yeah,
it's so cool.
it was
Yeah.
very refreshing. It was very refreshing to see, and I
Yes.
think you're right, it added a different dynamic. But let's get into like how we meet Simone. Obviously, um she she and Jordan had sort of like a one night stand, or
Yeah.
they were basically messing around, right? Messing around. We
Yeah.
don't really know like what's clear,
Like,
what's
you
not, because
just know
Jordan was
that
dating multiple.
Jordan has been, yeah, he's like with
Yeah,
a lot of
he was
girls.
with
And
multiple women
yeah.
after the whole affair came out between
Yeah.
Billy and Grace. And so like I just mentioned, she, comes to Jordan and basically is just like, I'm pregnant and the baby's yours.
It's
And so
yours.
we, like you said, her storyline was so attached to Jordan because it was his storyline in effect.
Yeah,
Uh
it was like an
I was
extension of his storyline. Yeah.
Right, right. And it was supposed to be a storyline about Jordan sort of receiving consequences, or it was like a cautionary tale. But again, Jeffrey Maya just knocked it out of the park. She was just like, "Oh, this character is we can do a lot with this character." So we find out that um as Jordan and Simone are preparing for this baby and they're sort of getting closer and he's checking on her. And again, she's very confident, like, your brother is ignoring me. I asked him to go to this checkup with me. And, she's talking to Olivia, like, what
Yeah.
is this? And Olivia's just like, all right, like, I get you. I
Father
get
for
you and
you.
calm down. Right? Jordan's gonna get it together. And eventually he does, and they really start sort of preparing for this baby.
And there's this thing people say all the time, which I completely agree with. Like, she changed Jordan's life in a way that, like, Jordan, as we know Jordan right now, it started with Simone and the whole storyline. That's how he grew into another side of his character that we have come to love. I wouldn't lie to you. I didn't really care about Jordan that much until Simone came into his life. I mean, I'm sorry, but like that's my truth. Like I love Jordan. I love the playful side of him and he was all of that, but I wasn't paying him that much attention until she came into his life. So,
I think of like things as like intersections. So I think the experience with his parents uh at going on at the same time is with like as well as
yeah,
like the influence of Simone like really caused Jordan to
to
grow
really
up a
grow
lot.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We said the
Exactly.
same thing.
That's the thing is exactly it did cause him to grow up.
Yeah.
Um and so as he's growing up, he like, you know, he and Olivia, mostly Olivia, right, put together this what is it, crib for the baby. Olivia put it together, he handed her the pieces.
Yeah.
And he's so excited that he pulls out
He's
this
gonna be
clock, this watch that Billy gave him, and it's a family heirloom, and he's just like
and
so
he's
excited
ready
to
to
show.
pass to his
Right,
child.
exactly, to give it to his child, and so he gives it to Simone, and so Simone, and so at this time, like Simone sort of decides to tell him that
Tell
he's
him.
he's not the father. And also at this time, at this time, I don't want to forget this. She has not told her
Yeah.
parents that she's pregnant yet. She's very afraid of
Yeah.
her parents, and I think that's important because when she finally decides to tell him, and he's asking her questions about it, she says, I did this because I saw how you loved your family and I wanted someone to love my baby
Yeah.
like that. Um and so what did you think about all that? What did you think about that introduction? I know it was a very I feel like Simone was a very sort of controversial character in the beginning because
Yeah.
of this storyline and because of it's that like we see it in the comments all the time like, oh, she lied on him, which
Yeah.
is just like she was
Oh, yeah.
16 and pregnant, like
I,
uh,
I see
yeah, it
that.
was
I'm
wrong,
like,
but
get
also
over
she
yourselves.
right,
Please.
like yes, it was wrong, but she acknowledged her wrong, and
Yeah.
she was
Hmm.
very vocal about it being not because he had money, but because she saw his family and she wanted someone to love his baby like
Exactly.
that.
And
So what
she
did you
comes
think?
from money too. So it's not as if she was trying to
Yeah,
rip him off or something. I feel
exactly.
like, yeah, she did something that wasn't right. But like the Simone we know, she was able to confidently come out again and tell him the truth about it and then why. And then I feel like for me, the reason she gave was super valid. I mean, you see a guy loving his family like that, and then you want to be a part of that because you don't know if you're Dane at that point. I don't think we've met him at that point, but obviously he
Mhm,
wasn't up
mhm.
for it or something. And then
Right.
she thought that Jordan would be a better option and alternative, and which he was from every of the actions he took afterwards. He was like the better option, even if he wasn't the dad. But like I said, maybe it's the bias I have for Simone. I could never like my whole take on that whole situation was yes, it wasn't right, but she was also 16. She was young and you when you're that young, you could literally do something that you're not proud of, obviously.
Yeah.
But then the fact that
No.
she came out clean, said what it was about, and it was also valid as well. I feel like people should just let it go because I still see people use that and bring that up and say this, that. I'm not the biggest Jimon fan, but when people use that as an argument against them, I don't think I key into that because it was just something that could have happened either way, I think.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. Um and I think that like I agree in the sense that like she's 16 and she's figuring it out. I'm very passionate about this, about like letting black women make mistakes on TV and not like over
Yeah.
punishing them
And
for
not
it.
like exactly because we could also make that excuse for some white girl and it's her and then we are just being so hard on her for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, yeah, it was wrong, but she very, I think, very quickly, very quickly, at least in the show's
Very
timeline, I
quickly
think fessed
actually.
up. Right, fessed up. I think it was like in the next episode, or a
Yeah.
couple episodes after. But So anyway, she comes to him because by the time we get sort of post shooting, she comes to inform him, and she's like, "It's the least I could do after all of this, right?" And then this is after they've talked, and Jordan's just like, I really wanna, I still wanna be like in your life,
Be a
and
part of the baby's
I
life. Yeah.
understand why you did right, be a part of the baby's life, and I understand why you did what you did. So she comes to him, warns Jordan about his dad's job, uh, but so they're like on friendly terms. He's checking in on her and everything like that.
Hmm.
She still hasn't told her parents about the baby,
About
and
the
Jordan's just
baby.
like, right. And Jordan's just like, well, if you want to tell your parents, I'll be there with you. So
I
they end
could
up
go
going
with
out to
you.
dinner.
Yeah.
Right. So they end up going out to dinner. By the way, this is just a fun little aside. I love when the writers keep it consistent, because the very first thing that Simone's mom says is like, "Oh, you're meeting me in a sports bar." So it's just really funny because that's continued obviously into season 3, and she's just like, "We're not
Yeah.
having a reception here." So anyway, I just appreciate
Here.
that little like
Yeah.
that consistent trait. She's always hated the hangout people, Simone's mom. What is her name? Tina. Tina has always
Tina.
hated the
Yeah.
hangout. Tina's
Tina.
always
I mean, she's
Tina
classy and
Hicks,
all that.
hilarious. She is. She is. So she actually wanted, and trigger warning, but she wanted Simone to get an abortion when Simone told her. Um, and Simone was not for that, and so Jordan invites her into to live with the Bakers, invites her to live with the Bakers. Um, and so we see Jordan like making Simone like some sort of pregnancy shake or something. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. And
Ooh.
Laura comes down. And specifically want to focus on this conversation with Laura and sort of skip past the Jordan part, because Laura comes down, Jordan leaves, and she has this conversation with Simone, that I think is overlooked, and I didn't even realize I had this conversation until I was going back for this podcast. And Laura tells Simone that Jordan is super kind, and Simone agrees, and Laura says like, kind people get hurt. And so right off the bat she was very protective of Jordan
Of
in this
Jordan.
situation with
Yeah.
Simone. Right. And I get it as a mom, but it's I say on this podcast all the time that I love Laura, and I think that she's the best parent on the show, because in spite of her protectiveness of Jordan, okay, the sort of the kind people get hurt, she goes on to give Simone advice, and she's like, "Look, you can stay here as long as you want and as long as you need." And then she starts to ask her about, but like, do you have a plan for after the
For the
baby is
baby.
born? And
Yeah.
Simone, right, and Simone is just like, she doesn't know. And then Laura encourages her to start thinking like a
Thinking
mom,
towards
because she wants to keep, yeah, because she
the
wants to keep the
baby.
baby. And so she's just like, and she's not, start thinking like a mom, not just for Jordan. Jordan's actually the third person she mentions, but she's like thinking like
Yeah.
a mom for your baby, thinking like a mom for you,
For
and like
yourself. Yeah.
making a plan accordingly, right? So making this plan for the baby, making this plan for you, and making this plan for Jordan, so that nobody gets hurt. And I
Gets her in.
think, right, gets hurt in the process. And I think that we always acknowledge sort of Jordan and Simone's impact on each other, but realizing
Yeah.
that there's other people that also had an impact. Like we mentioned Olivia earlier for Jordan, but this conversation I think is really what changes Simone's
Simone's
mindset.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you think about just like hearing that and hearing like sort of what Laura told Simone?
Oh, well, first off, I know that some people don't like Laura, but like you said, she's like a great mom. Okay, not great, great is too much. I think she's a
I
good
think she's
mom.
a great mom.
Oh, okay. I would say she's a good
No, no, no,
mom
you're
too.
good. You're good. You can think she's a good mom. I'm just always Laura is in my top. Laura is in my top.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell. Okay, she's a good mom and she cares for her kids, even if the writers sometimes annoy me and don't give them as much screen time as they should with Jordan and Olivia, especially Jordan recently. But then I feel like that conversation, like you said, it was a wake up call for Simone. Like, you know how you're like, something, you're preparing towards something, and you're not like thinking ahead and you're just thinking about the moment. I think that's what she was doing at that point. She wanted to keep this baby, but she wasn't thinking of the impact yet that it would have on her life and how she was going to go through with the whole situation. She was just there living in the moment. Like you said, she said she could stay there as long as she could. But then what happens after the baby is born? What happens to her? What happens to the baby? How does it, and maybe that's where the switch happens for her, and like, oh, I'm actually going to be a mom, I'm actually going to bear a child. So what happens with me, schooling, the baby, and since I'm not giving the baby, okay, I don't know whether they've talked about adoption at this point. No, yeah, I think she still wanted to keep the baby at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they like mentioned adoption, but it wasn't like set
It
in stone.
wasn't, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think at this point, she was just going with the flow, like day to day. Okay, I'm pregnant, but okay, it doesn't really make that much sense to her. Like we say, sometimes people forget how young she was at this point. I mean, when you're 16 and pregnant, I don't know. I don't think you're thinking about all this whole huge changes that would happen to your life. You're just like, okay, I'm just going with the flow, you're just worried about little
Especially
things
not after
like
your parents have
changes.
kicked you out, like, you haven't told them, and then when
Exactly.
you finally tell them, they kick you out, yeah.
And at that point, she was lacking that family support that everyone needs at this point. So, and then this ties down back to what we said about whole her thinking that Jordan would be a great option for the baby. Look at Laura giving her that kind of advice, something that her mom would have never said to her at this
Right,
point. She just wanted to condemn her and maybe just get the baby out of the way instead of
right,
thinking
so
through
that she
about
could get
what
into
Simone
Stanford.
wanted.
Right.
Exactly. So it was just more about, she cared more about Simone, which wasn't necessarily bad, but she didn't care about the fact that Simone also cared about the baby and wanted the baby in her life. So yeah,
Right,
I think
right.
Laura did a
No,
great job. That was
yeah,
nice.
no,
Like
I
you said,
agree.
sometimes we forget the third parties in these relationships. I think they all played a part, even if briefly or something. This was really good advice, I think, especially something since her mother couldn't be there to give her that. So that was really
Yeah.
nice.
No, and I love the way that you included that in is, like, you're absolutely right, right? Like, this is why she chose Jordan is, like, exactly this conversation with Laura is because
Yeah,
his when it comes
knowing
down
the
to
kind
it,
of
I'm gonna
family,
include
yeah.
Laura and Olivia in that. Laura, Olivia, and Jordan. Like, they're gonna when it comes down to it,
Yeah.
uh, they're gonna show up. So sort of fast forwarding a little bit,
Okay.
after that conversation with Laura,
Mm-hmm.
Simone sort of takes it upon herself to leave the Bakers. She gets a hotel room. Um, she says that she called Dane. He's trying to not to be in the baby's life
Baby's
still,
life.
but
Yeah.
she doesn't tell Jordan that. So Jordan's checking in on her. He finds out about the hotel room, uh, and like is just trying to be in her life. He mentions that he likes her. She gets sort of upset about it. Um,
Yeah.
but again, like it's just sort of this sort of like back and forth with them, whether or not they're like
They're gonna
platonic,
get
what their
together.
relationship
Yeah.
is, what's the nature of their
Mm-hmm.
relationship. But then Jordan goes and talks to her mom for her. And that's when she sort of like and it basically encourages her mom to let her live at the house
At the
again. And
house
you
again.
know right, and so she has a talk with her mom, and she says things are good, and so she returns a favor by giving Jordan that highlight reel that's so famous. And then, of course, like these are like the last couple of episodes, so it's like, that was like in 215, and so in the season finale of season 2, that's when Jordan's just like, "I'm in love with you. This is the hail mary." Da da da. She gets with Jordan. So
Yeah,
we
that
know
was
that
cute.
story. This is not necessarily a Jabon podcast, but as they go through that summer, as we know,
See,
they
that's the
decide.
issue. We cannot talk about Simone in All American without bringing Jordan.
Oh,
Like you said,
absolutely not. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly, because everything she did on the show on All American was like not until we started talking, having talks about the spin off that we started hearing things that were more about herself than about her relationship with Jordan. But it's fine.
Right.
I'm not
Right.
complaining.
Well, and yeah, that's the case because it was like that's the reason the character came
Yeah,
on
that's
was
what
to be
exactly.
Jordan's storyline, and so she's always going to be
Yeah,
attached to Jordan
yeah,
for this fact. Uh, and
yeah,
so as we get into season 3, we know that Jordan and Simone got married sort of after being in love for the whole summer. So in love that people were just like grossed out by it, right? Liv didn't want to go to Vegas. Everybody
yeah.
that was in Vegas was like making disgusted
New
noises about
faces. Yeah,
right, right, and yeah, just being so open about their love, and even if it didn't make sense to other people, that
to others. Yeah,
they were gonna do what's best for them. And
yeah,
as they leave that, I think focusing in back on like the Simone of it all, um,
hmm,
as it's getting closer to school, as it's getting closer to the delivery of the baby, and when Simone has her baby, I think that's another sort of turning point for her, right? Because
yeah,
this was, to your point, this was something very, I think, theoretical. Like she was living it, but it was also just
yeah.
very
The
obviously new to
realness of
her.
it
And
hasn't come up yet. Yeah,
exactly, exactly. And so as she's thinking about this, and as she's experiencing the realness because she has given up the baby and it was a closed adoption, so she didn't even
she
see
didn't
the
know.
baby right at first.
Yeah,
She turned her head away, and so that really deeply affects her. She's sort of avoiding Jordan's calls as she's dealing with having this baby. So what did you think about that and her sort of immediate reaction of going through pregnancy, and again like the realness of it for her?
yeah. I mean, following up on what I said earlier, the fact that she knew she was pregnant, but then the reality of it didn't sink in yet until the baby came. It's one thing to know, and then it's actually another thing to live through it. And then with the whole closed adoption thing, and then tying back to the fact that she was that age at that time, having to deal with all of that. I mean, even though her parents allowed her to get back home, the fact that she had to even experience any of that, having to live at the baker's, live at the hotel room, and all of that, so it was just a little too much. So I think that reaction that she had, it was it was justified to me. I mean, it's not easy. Even as an older person, I'm slightly older than her, like in real life. I mean, I don't even imagine how I could feel going through all of that. How much more? Like, I know it's fiction, but still, it was a lot. It was so much. It was a lot. But her feelings were super valid. Because, I mean, closed adoption. And, all along, she wanted to take care of the baby, even though she didn't know how. And
Yeah,
it ties back again to what we said about the whole theoretical part of it. She knew that she wanted to take care of the baby, but she didn't know how. So when the reality of it
exactly.
dawned on her, and she knew that she needed to give up the baby, with what her dad said and all that, that the baby was going to have a better life than she could give the baby. So,
Right.
I mean, I would be sad too. I would be super sad too, and probably avoid people too. So I think that was such a natural response to what had happened to her. Yeah,
I agree. And for her age and for the situation, and also pregnancy in general, like it changes the chemistry of your brain. And I think that something that is starting to become more, I think, acceptable in society is talking about how pregnancy impacts women. And
yeah,
there is a such thing as like postpartum depression. Even if it's a very
depression.
mild
Yeah,
case, I think in Simone's case, but like,
yeah,
and just the difference in that, and how that impacts you as a person. So I yeah, uh, agree with
hmm,
all your points. And to your point, I love that you said like she wants to care for the baby. You're like just yeah, you're saying everything for me. I don't even need to comment on it. Uh, but to your point about her thinking first about how to care for the baby, the next situation that we see her in is, maybe is it is it best if I give this baby up, right? And she had a period
Yeah,
of time where she could take the baby back from the folks who
they adopted
adopted
him.
him, baby Shay, and
Baby
we know that she
Shay.
eventually saw his face because her dad took a picture because he happened to
Yeah,
run into
the
the
dad as
father.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, she goes through this period where she's thinking about it. She tells Jordan sort of oversteps, right? But um
Mhm. Well, he was
she
doing it
goes
from
to
a
talk to
place of
them.
love. Yeah. So.
Right, right, right. He was doing it for a place of love. And so she ends up going to talk to them alone. And right after sort of knocking on the door and seeing how much they cared for baby Shay, then she's just like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't like I just wanted to make sure that the baby was okay."
That's actually one of my favorite scenes of her.
Same.
That was so sweet. Like, I think I actually teared up a bit.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
again, like she's so young and she's just trying to figure it out. And
Oh my God. She just wanted to care for that baby. She just wanted that baby to be okay. And, seeing how much love he was enveloped with there, I think she finally got some peace of mind to, okay, okay, maybe I can relax a bit and know that he's doing okay with them. So that was really sweet.
no, exactly. And so I love that she got that moment of reassurance and
Yeah.
got that. It's not even closure because then,
No, it's
she's
not
now in the
closure. I
baby's
think, like
life.
you said,
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
reassurance, or rather, the certainty of mind that he was okay, because she still
He
had
was okay, and
doubts.
that she could be in his life, right? Because they let her be in
Yeah.
his life, and so I really appreciate that. And we're gonna get back to that as we move forward to Homecoming. But wrapping up her time in All American, simultaneously she's trying to figure out what she's gonna do for college, because that she was creating a human, so she had to take a break. So
Yeah.
when she finally is able to focus on that college again, right, she's a
Hmm.
little late to doing the applications, and her and Jordan have this conversation about whether they truly know each other, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. um and she's just like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I have a good idea for what I can write about the college, for my college essays, is
Application.
like
Yeah.
what's been going on, yeah, what's been going on in my life, and the two loves of her life, as she called it." The two loves of her
Yeah.
life. So she's starting to figure out what she's doing for college, starting to get back into tennis, which we also figure out because of this whole, maybe they don't know each other as well as they thought. We
Homecoming.
find out that
Yeah.
she's a tennis player with, as the writers call it, Serena Williams potential.
Ah,
I
please,
must
that's my
say,
God.
if there was a line that I wish the writers did not include, it was that one. Just because it's like this was the first time the
The
audience
fact
was hearing about
exactly
tennis.
we didn't hear. I mean, sorry, but
And I was
that
just
was a
like, just say
little.
Naomi Osaka, just say Sloane Stevens, like say any say
Yeah.
another big name in the
Because
tennis, but
the whole
don't
tennis
jump to
storyline,
Serena.
it hit me like a rock. I'm like, what now? She plays what now? Like,
Right.
she has never
Exactly.
mentioned that before, and then it just comes up,
Not a
and it
word.
comes up with that kind of information. Yeah,
So, but
that's
we
good.
do find out that she's a really good tennis player, and
Hmm.
just throughout the rest of the season when she's not sort of she's supporting Jordan, as he suffers the consequences of his own actions and gets a concussion and all of that, and might not
Yeah.
be able to play football and slips into a bit of a depression. But they both sort of reconnect, um reconnect as she's figuring out where she wants to go to college, and then they sort of decide to be open about their marriage, which came out because Jordan's concussion. There's a lot of Jordan's concussion pushing their marriage out
Jordan.
uh
Hmm.
into the forefront, and she had
Into the
and
open,
obviously
yeah.
her and Laura had that whole that whole sort of
Squabble at the
um
hospital, yeah.
squabble. Exactly. I was gonna say blow up, but I was like, I didn't want to say well. Squabble is good. Squabble is good. They have that whole squabble about what's best for Jordan's care because Laura was asking a lot of questions, and we got the infamous phrase, right? Wife trumps
Wife
mother in this
trumps
case.
mother. That was good. That was really good.
Again, my Laura defense was like, why are you talking about my Laura like that? Why are you talking about my Laura like that? No, it was Laura was doing too much. She was doing a little bit too much,
And
but
then
still,
on my
I
one, I
feel
was
like
like, "Go girl, you go girl, you tell her, tell her, tell her."
I was like low key neutral and low key just like both of them should have took
Hmm.
a chill pill in
Yeah.
that instance. But again, so it ends up coming out right that they're married, and so then it's like with that,
Hmm.
it's Simone's parents finding out that they're married as well, and a whole conversation ensues about whether to get it annulled
Begins,
or
yeah.
right, or whether to make it official. And again, Simone's mom is Simone's mom. So she's like, "Oh,
Teener,
I
oh
want to
my
make it
god, she
official."
just comes on to,
Comes on to stir up trouble? Yes. But no, so
yeah.
she's Simone's mom is just like, "Oh, we're having an official wedding. Here are the colors." Like she was like, do you want neutral red or do you want crimson?" Like what?
Oh my, no, she was acting like she was planning her own wedding. Like,
She was, and let's not
oh my
forget that
god.
she felt like she could do all of this
Mm,
because Olivia released the tapes, and so she was just like, "Oh, they have too much going on in
mm.
the Baker household to even realize that we're
Yeah,
planning a wedding."
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so again, we could see how just controlling her mom is and pushing this wedding together, and so it really stresses Simone out, I think, and so both she and Jordan with the whole her trying to get back on the track with tennis, her dealing with these college applications, obviously
Hmm.
this wedding, and Jordan with everything he had going on with football and everything. They were like looking for a weekend away, which is
A
how we
weekend
get
away.
dun da da da
Homecoming. Okay,
homecoming.
that was fun. Yeah, probably still my best episode of season 3. So I
It's
think,
a
yeah,
really good episode.
should
It's a
be.
really, really
Hmm.
excellent episode. So we get the homecoming. We get the homecoming pilot. Obviously, Jordan, Spencer, and Olivia are with her as she visits her aunt. We find out she has an aunt, right? Who's a journalism teacher. And this whole pilot is about Simone trying to figure out what she wants to
What
do for
she
college and
wanted.
then coming
Yeah.
right and coming to understand that she didn't think about going to an HBCU at first, but after her experiences, one of them being meeting Damon Sims,
Hmm.
another one of them meeting, getting to hear the tail end of classes and, taking part in a dance competition. Why we find out Simone dances
Yeah.
and all that. Um, but again, just the experience as a whole, meeting Keisha and Nate and playing against Thea, who, really the first from the jump like pushed her and really challenged her and seeing Simone in sort of that underdog role, which I don't think that we get to see
Yeah.
very often in All American, but seeing
Yeah.
someone
We
who
don't
really
ever get to see
challenges
that. Yeah.
right, seeing someone who challenged her like on I think and off the court immediately in Thea. Right, she had the whole thing where she's like, "Do you always go this intense, like just to warm
For
up?"
your practice. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so seeing the push for excellence, I think, is really what gravitated Simone towards Bringston. And by the end of that pilot, she decides to go
I
there.
mean, I feel like she already knew. Yeah. I feel like
Yeah,
by the time she was leaving, she already knew that she wanted to go there. I feel
one thousand
a part of
percent,
me feels
one
that.
thousand
Yeah.
percent. What do you think about sort of the her character trajectory in applying for Princeton, which I didn't mention at the top, but applying for Princeton and applying to these colleges, And then eventually just going through all of this where it was like sort of her marriage to Jordan was sort of forced out into the open through the circumstances. She's coming off of, this whole situation where she was pregnant, had the baby, and then is now in the baby's life, and etc. Just everything that she went through sort of in season 3 leading up to her visit to Bringston, and how she ultimately decided that maybe Bringston was for her. What do you think was like, I know it's a lot, but what do you think was like going through her mind?
I feel like at this point they knew that I don't know whether they were still pitching for Homecoming at that point, but you could see her character start to expand more than we heard about her playing tennis. We just
Mhm.
saw things that we didn't normally see about her because her storyline was initially tied to Jordan and then the baby, and now we see her expanding. We see her thinking of college, where to go to, whether with Jordan outside of a relationship. We just started seeing more of a character taking shape personally on her own, independent of any relationships or friendships or whatever that could be associated with that. And like you said, she's just given up her baby for adoption. And although she was in the baby's life, but that was not the initial plan. So I feel like that detachment thing was going on as well. The fact that she had to come to terms with the fact that she was not going to raise the baby. Like, as much as she was comfortable with baby she being with the adopted parents, I feel like she would still be struggling with that. The fact that the baby was not going to be with her, and then the marriage at that point. And I feel like maybe as she thought about her future, the fact that they were married, obviously she was thinking about her future with Jordan and not away from him. So like you said, us seeing more of her outside of anything. I feel like all the decisions it made, even especially about Bringston, was independent of anything. I think when she was there, she felt at home. First of all, despite it being a couple of miles, thousands of miles actually away from home, but she felt at home with the tennis program, with everything. I feel like she saw a whole new world, and finally she could. I feel like in that moment at Bringston, she put her relationship on like the back burner or something, and she only saw that school through her own eyes, which I feel was actually really nice because all it's like since we met her, there's always someone attached. It was either the baby, it was either Jordan, it was either someone. But for once, she saw something through just her own eyes and only just for herself. And I think that was very refreshing to see. She was just thinking for herself and her future. And then she ties down back to saying, "Oh, we're married, all this and all that." But in that moment at Brixton, I think she was just thinking for herself. And I think that was really nice.
I agree, and I was actually gonna say I think, similar to what you said, I think that she had spent sort of the past, let's say, since we meet her in season 2 all the way up until this point, like you said, being attached to somebody, if it was, but also like caring for someone. Like her focus was the baby for so long, and then after the baby came, it was like sort of immediately, just because of what it ended up being with Jordan's concussion, it was like, Jordan, like, what are you doing? And then obviously he got hurt more after that concussion, after cheating the concussion protocol. um and so her focus was Jordan, and then sort of it had to immediately be the wedding and like the
About
decision that they
Jordan.
made to get
Mm-hmm.
married, and it was about her parents, etc. Meanwhile, also, like, her with college had been like, trying to appease her mom, whether that was going to Stanford, whether it was going to Princeton, but going to like an Ivy League school. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that um when she gets to Bringston in the homecoming pilot, backdoor pilot, she again is like, okay, this is what Jordan, or I sort of know what Jordan wants to do. And also like homecoming pilot, but also the wedding that ended up being Billy and Laura's like, yeah, wedding. But
Yeah.
her really coming to her terms with the fact that, like, you know, I I feel like this is where I can grow, and I feel like this is where I can succeed, and I feel my world expanding. Like you said, like her character is
Yeah.
expanding, but I feel like within the
Like
show,
for once we
like
could
her
see some form
world.
of individuality. That's where we saw the her being an individual on her own without all of those attachments. Yeah.
Right, right. And I think that we saw that as an audience because the character expanded, but I also think like within herself as a character, like
Hmm.
her world expanded when she went to Bringston.
Yeah.
And so she really wanted to explore that. And so obviously she comes, talks to Jordan about this. And decides that she wants to go to Bringston. Obviously, he initiates just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go with you,"
Yeah.
but she, you know, she knows that that's not his dream
His
in a
dreams.
nutshell.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so they have this conversation where they like mutually encourage like each other to go for
Each
their
other to
dreams.
follow their dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, to follow their dreams, and if that means that they have to go back to being boyfriend and girlfriend as they call it, even if it makes sense to no one else as they call it, again as they say,
Yeah.
um that that's what they're gonna do because their path is their path, and you know
Hmm.
it's for them to understand. And so that's sort of where we leave her, I think, in the all-American world, because after that it was her prepping for Bringston, to be honest.
Yeah.
Very much in the background. So that's Simone's journey on All American, is sort of coming into her own as an individual. I had to pause it right there, but stay tuned for part two, where we talk about All American Homecoming season one and Simone's character journey through that. Thanks for listening again.